Hey there everybody, this is Jared the Third with another ESO how-to video. Today I'm going to be going over how to main tank VSS hard mode. And you can also use these strategies to help you move towards the Godslayer achievement. If you find it helpful, give me a like and a subscribe, and go check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching, have a great day. There are a few key parts of main tanking Lokk that we'll go over today. Range tanking and why, which is connected to controlling breaths, the skills necessary, and tanking ice atros during flight phase. These make up the key components for the main tank on Lokk towards Godslayer. What is range tanking and why do it? Range tanking is standing out of range of Lokk's breath and melee attacks. Given he can't do those attacks, he will always spit an ice ball at you. Since that attack is so strong and stacks damage, you will need the skill Defensive Posture found in the Sword and Board skill line. Defensive Posture, that morph throws the projectile back at Lokk, so you actually get to do a little DPS even as a main tank. The main reason for this strategy is to control when Lokk does his ice breath, so that you could potentially skip doing one of the ice cages. This will help push some extra damage on Lokk, making the fight overall easier. We'll also go over the cage mechanics and how it relates to breath. The cages spawn roughly 20 seconds apart from each other. There are 2 cages for every ice cage spawn in hard mode. When they spawn, they are both on a 10-second timer before they explode. After the second cage is completed, the next cages will spawn 10 seconds after that. The goal of controlling the breath is to push an extra 3 to 4 seconds of damage and not have to worry about an added spawn of cages, as mentioned before. Now the question, how do you actually control the breath? This is the primary reason you range tank. Lokk flight phases start at 80%, 50%, and 20% of his health. Ideally, your group has enough damage to where you can proc the breath at the 3 to 4% markers before those flight phases. So for example, proccing the breath at 83 to 84% health, 53 to 54% health, and then 23 to 24% health. And again, this is to successfully skip a cage and to get extra damage onto Lokk. And something that only comes with experience is knowing the range of where you go to proc the breath instead of a melee attack, and when you can activate the breath after a previous attack. If you get too close, you might get a melee attack. If you're too far away, you won't trigger the breath, basically. Generally, the little edge of snow here is a good distance to proc breath. You'll notice I step up during an attack or roll dodge an ice bolt to that point to queue up the breath for Lokk next attack. And again, I am mostly going by health percentage, and my group has enough damage I can trust the cage isn't spawning soon. So you don't even need Close Combat alerts, for example, to tell you when the next one is spawning. There is a lot of finesse and getting a feel for the rhythm of Lokk's attacks to get the hang of this. So please don't be discouraged if you aren't getting it right away. It takes time and practice, but once you get the hang of it, is immensely rewarding for your group. Even if your goal isn't to successfully skip cages, I am still convinced range tanking is safer overall for the group, because it's safer for DPS going to cages that might be on that side of the breath, and it's also safer for the off-tank, who will usually be holding the ice atros near the boss, since the off-tank in this scenario is typically an Alkosh. Now we'll go over handling adds for each flight phase. For the first phase, you will grab the ice atro that spawns closest to you, allowing the off-tank to grab the one further and having 2 ice atros. What typically is easiest for the main tank is to go to the storm atro a little further ahead of the group so that your ice atro immediately starts taking cleave when the DDs get to that storm atro. One of the skills every tank should have is Purge, so you can purge DDs while they are killing atros, as well as during second and third beam phase when the storm atros are alive. Storm atros randomly light attack people, applying a purgeable minor vuln to them. After everything is dead on the first flight phase, you can position yourself in the middle of the room to taunt Lokk on landing. The beam happens immediately for the second flight phase, so grab your ice atro and go to the opposite side of the room from the other tank. The tanks have the extremely important role of keeping up purge during static. Remember, The Storm Atro light attacks apply a purgeable minor vulnerability. Minor Vul means DPS and healers are taking more damage from static. I recommend a purge every 2 to 3 seconds during this really high damage intake period. And you also need to pay attention to the Ice Atro's positioning and your resources. After static, go place your Ice Atro on a Storm Atro similar to the first flight phase. For the final flight phase, you will take both of the new Ice Atros that spawn when Lokk flies away, so this phase is different than the first and second in that regard. This is so the single Ice Atro that the off-tank has can be guaranteed to die quickly. Once the OT's Ice Atro is dead, they should take one off of you. After beam, they can take the other Ice Atro off of you. It is up to you and your group if you continue killing Storm Atros after the beam phase on this final flight phase. A lot of groups just get ready for Lokk to land so they can kill him quickly. It's totally up to you. One final note for flight phases regarding Ice Atros is if the off-tank has put an Ice Atro into 2 Storm Atro cages and it still has a little bit of health, you want to grab that one off the off-tank and let the off-tank take your full health one. That is so this low health one does not accidentally take a Storm Atro cage that the full health one should be taking. Now we're going to go over how to handle Yoln on hard mode as a main tank. Yoln has some very crucial parts for the main tank to play. Each phase is the exact same with the variance on the final phase if you choose so, which I'll go over when we get there. The primary job of the main tank is to manage your damage intake from Yoln's bites, which apply a pretty nasty bleed, and most importantly, quickly, efficiently, and safely getting flame atros underneath Yoln. This is a strategy almost every Godslayer group will do, as it kills them before they enrage, ideally, and avoids giant lava pools in the middle of the room. I'll go over all the tips and tricks I know to help manage this. Just as a general rule, you should always be guarded by a healer on this fight when you're using this strat. Flame atros spawn at 2 different points, behind the group to the back right and the back left. When Yoln throws his head back to summon them, reapply a fresh taunt to him and immediately turn around. One trick I do here to take less damage is to go to the center of the room while still being close enough for the guard from the healer to not fall off. If you remain too close to Yoln during this time, he will go for a heavy attack, which is a heavy hit and applies a nasty bleed. Going to the center of the room, like I mentioned, will cue him to do a flame spit at you instead, since you're out of melee range. The timing has always lined up for me to immediately turn around, taunt the far flame atro, roll dodge to avoid the flame spit, taunt the nearest flame atro, and then start making my way underneath Yoln. Now a specific tip on getting underneath him safely. Once you get back in melee range, he will very likely try to heavy attack you, so just be aware of that. If you try to just walk underneath him, he will for sure snap bite you backwards, which will stagger you. You want to start a roll dodge underneath him about 5 to 8 meters away from the fire ring underneath him. This will help you to avoid the snap bite, ensuring you can actually get underneath him. Once you are underneath him, there is a methodological way to move and to get atros under there. First, adjust yourself on the inner side of his right foot, basically on his toenail. 2, you must go in first person to be able to chain the flame atros, otherwise you will only hit Yoln with your chain. So make sure you have first person keybound. And a weird tip for this, as weird as it may sound, is do not have a shield style that covers up your view when blocking in first person. I know it's weird, but it makes a difference. 3, chain the closest flame atro, then chain the furthest, which should now be in range of your chain. And a tip with chaining, if you are finding the further atro bounces out a lot, take a tiny step to your left before you chain him in. Another weird tip, but the very front part of Yoln's snout can sometimes be a sort of invisible wall that the atros hit. If this is happening, just take a small step to the left, as I said before you chain. And finally, number 4, go back to third person view, take a step away, and the atro should be dead, and then roll dodge back out from underneath the Yoln. If you try to walk out, you will likely get the snap bite as you would if you try to just walk under him. Throughout all of this, make sure you refresh taunt on Yoln at least once. Whew, and you did it. The final phase, or execute, generally will go by fast enough where the off-tank can take the flame atros and kite them around the back and not really be a danger, since Yoln will usually die quickly since damage ramps up and execute so much. It's up to you and your group if you want the main tank to take them underneath or the OT to kite them. Either way is totally fine. I will make note of another option to bring the flame atros underneath Yoln, and that is using the set Swarm Mother, which pulls enemies to you if they hit you while blocking. You basically need to taunt the flame atros and make sure you don't block until you're underneath Yoln. I personally do not prefer this method, as in my experience it's either bugged out or you accidentally block before being underneath Yoln and you pull one to you too early. With chaining, I found it easy to adjust if it was messing up. But either way, they both work. It's totally up to you. Tanking Nahvi is a mix of managing damage intake, particularly during mark, and also stacking the adds during the add phases very, very quickly. There are multiple ways I've seen groups handling these things, so I'll just go over my preferences and what I've done most recently. And positioning of the main tank matters on Nahvi. So, I'll generally mention this, you want to not be very far outside the inner ring. I'm convinced that one of the things that contributes to soul tear happening sooner than later is main tank being a little too far away from Nahvi. Soul tear is for sure caused by slow DPS and it queuing up in Nahvi's attacks, but like I said, I think the main tank positioning also contributes, and I base this off many times, main tanking it and trying out different positioning. So test for yourself. Mark basically means you're shattered. If you have it going into adds like I do here, you need to pay very close attention to when you're healing in relation to when and how much damage is incoming. The healer guarding you should also be spamming heals on you. For the 80% adds, we stack these in the center, but you can also stack them on the back left Fate, or Mage, whatever. Either way works fine. You as a main tank will always take the 2 melee adds on the right. The third tank will always take the 2 melee on the left. If you can grab the adds off the third tank once they're stacked, do so. Handling Mark can be vicious. If you have any other extra damage, it can get pretty scary. I recommend always having the skill immovable on your front bar, because when you cast it, you have an increase of block mitigation for really sticky situations. It also helps you to not be stunned in a time stop. When healing yourself during mark, you need to consider when you take damage and when you can use a skill, especially during a marked breath. You take more ticks of breath than you can cast skills, so try to be wise about when you cast your burst heals. The healer should mostly be spamming heals on you at that point as well. And finally, breath is about 3 seconds long, and you can roll dodge quite a lot of the ticks by roll dodging at the last full second of breath, so the 3rd second. Just be aware that you can't pop a heal mid-roll dodge, so you kind of trade off there a little bit. The next thing is the add stacking. This is way more intimidating than it seems. A really simple order for stacking adds in the middle of the room is 1. Take a step forward to taunt the further melee add on the right. 2. As you're stepping backwards, taunt the second melee add that's closer to you on your right. And 3. Allow the adds to take a few steps towards you. And finally 4. Roll dodge through the center of the ring, pointing the adds away and helping them to stack more tightly together. Again, if you can, take the will especially off the third tank. The faster you can do this, the better it will be for your group. The final 40% is basically continuing to do what you've been doing. If you get a meteor, you can roll dodge underneath the boss and drop it. if you're marked and a meteor is dropping on you, drop it on his right knuckle. Be mindful if one of the tanks is behind you with the statue, but if you keep up what you have been doing so far, you will do just fine in the last 40% of the boss. Congratulations, you have now done Nahvi hard mode. All right, everyone, congratulations on figuring out VSS hard mode towards the Godslayer achievement for a main tank. I hope this has been a helpful video. Again, give me a like and a subscribe if it has. Drop any comments or questions below if you think I've missed something or I can clarify something. And check out my Twitch that is also linked below for live reading on NA and EU. I've also got a list of add-ons that I've used in Y and other things in the description, so just check it out down there. Thanks so much again. Have a great rest of your day.